All right, those admits have slowed down just a little bit. So we'll go to the next slide, and our dear Stephanie will drop that sign in one more time as other people come in. Just a quick reminder of who our partners are in the Southern Inland Regional Technical Assistance Center. We're excited to have those partners here today. And we're excited to do this work with all of you involved. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder about our vision, and we want to always make sure that this is in our decks so that everyone can take a look at why we are doing the work that we are doing, uplifting every voice to discover their purpose and unleash their power to thrive with unity and diversity of perspectives and gifts as we ensure learning for all. Next slide, please. I am going to introduce myself. I am Siobhan Monterosa. I'm one of the community schools coordinator. I will take the pleasure of introducing our new community schools coordinator, Yvonne Moyes, but I'm going to let her take the mic and tell everyone a little bit about her because she is new to the team. So Yvonne, you take it away.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. And yes, Happy New Year. It's hard to believe I'm still writing 2023 on my all my paperwork. So I'm still getting used to this 2024. But I am excited to be with you all. I am born and raised, went to school here in San Bernardino County. So I am the very definition of work, play, live here in San Bernardino County. But I have a true passion for the work. I'm excited to be with this amazing team and really just leaning into all the work and getting to hear what you guys have already started, where you're at, and just ready to get there in there and roll up my sleeves with you all. So thank you, Siobhan.
Absolutely. And Dr. Kemp, who's going to lead our COTP today, just want to give her an opportunity to say hello.
Hello.
Okay, literally hello. David Culverhouse, I'm gonna come in and say hi to our community.
Hey, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. And like we said before, wishing everyone a happy new year, and it's great to see everyone here today.
And our right hand behind the scenes, Stephanie Mahi is there sending a bunch of love in the chat. And if you want to pop on and say hi, Stephanie, feel free to do so. Okay, and our director, Jennifer, is also on the team. Don't forget about her, and she may pop in later. Next slide, please. Our agenda for today. Our topic today is predominantly around the community schools partnership program implementation plan and the capacity building strategies that help execute the work that we're doing and the overarching values that are the foundation of why we're doing what we're doing. So Dr. Kemp is going to facilitate a practical conversation around those topics. And she will open us up and I will close this out. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Kemp.
Now we'll say hi a little bit further. Hello, and thank you for coming out to our community of transformational practice today. We are excited to have you here, and we really hope that the information provided will help you through the year when it comes time for you to turn in your community schools implementation plan. Next slide, please. So before we start, we always have our welcome ritual, just kind of get an idea of how everyone is feeling today. So looking at this awesome scale of just all these beautiful faces of these sweet little animals, how are you feeling today on this scale? Please drop it in the chat.
I don't know if I feel the same way that this little puppy feels, but that number 3 just warms my little heart.
Yes. I see some sixes coming in, some twos. I saw a three, another three. Well, I know everyone is, whether you're relaxed or tired or it's just like everything is just moving so quickly. I promise you, we will not bite during this presentation. We will try to get you the information you need. And then, of course, you'll always have time to refer to it later. Um, so we're going to go ahead and proceed. Next slide, please. So let's start off and talk about the California way. I know at our last community of transformational practice, this diagram was introduced, but I want to make sure that when we are introducing any diagram that is dealing with our California Community Schools framework, that you can always put some context to it and see it in a practical manner to help build your knowledge. So let's go to the next slide, please. So the California Way is talking about the what, how, why, and sustainability of our community schools work that we are doing in the state of California. And we're going to break this down today in this presentation, the what, how, and why. So we can, of course, lead to that eventual sustainability piece that as we are building our community school hubs, that not only are we sustaining the staffing that we need to do the work, that we're also sustaining those great practices, those programs, those services for students to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that we're getting to the main goal of that community school framework, which is, of course, positive student outcomes, whether it be academics, behavior, and social emotional. Next slide, please. So for today, this is going to be our presentation. We're going to talk about the what of our community schools implementation plan. The goal of the plan is basically to outline those steps that are going to get us to that positive outcome of student learning. So again, this plan will outline the strategies, the steps, the goals that you need to address based on the priorities that came from your needs and assets assessment that you did previous this year or that you're in the process of doing, depending upon what cohort that you're in. So if you're planning cohort 1, you're working on your implementation plan for the implementation grant application. If you are implementation grant cohort 1 and 2, you're starting to look at your implementation plan to turn in at the end of the year. And then, of course, for our planning cohort 2, you're in the beginning stages, which is mean you're probably finishing up your needs and assets assessment to get to this piece. So everyone is in different places, but the information is still valuable. The how do we implement this community schools implementation plan? We are implementing with our capacity building strategies. Those are the practices and action steps we need to have in place in order to implement that community schools implementation plan. And why are we doing the work? We are doing it because we want to make sure as we are building our community school hubs that we have an environment that's racially just with relationship centered spaces. We have created an environment that has a shared power structure where all the community stakeholders are involved. We are making sure that we are building those classroom community connections. And we're also focusing on continuous improvement, making sure as we go from year to year, as we are looking at the implementation of community schools, that we are appreciating our growth areas and that we're always taking opportunities to improve. Next slide, please. So as we are implementing our community schools implementation plan with the use of the capacity building strategies, and we know our why, what are those overarching values, our ultimate goal is sustainability, right? The ability to endure and thrive over the long term. We want to make sure that as a school site that you are building a model that has those services and programs and staffing in place so that you can sustain your framework and model that you have developed for your school based on your own local context. And in the long run, you're looking at financial sustainability, community engagement and support, partnerships, that integration into the education system. You already know what data that you're looking at on an annual basis. What's the professional learning, that development, that drives your community. And then at the end of the day, if you were to extend that community schools model to other sites within your district that are not doing it, that you can replicate it based on any scale. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about the what. What exactly is our implementation plan? Next slide, please. So again, just a reminder, for our cohorts, our implementation grant cohort 1 and number 2, every year you are expected to turn in an implementation plan at the end of the year. It may not always look the same. It may be revised based on changes in your environment and the growth that's occurring over time as you're implementing this model. And it's due at the 30th of every year for June. This year, your due date is June 30th, 2024. For our planning grant cohort number 1, for those that are all applying for the implementation grant for cohort number 3, you're dealing with your implementation plan and you're developing it for that application. And that due date is February 9th. For planning grant cohort 2, if you're going to apply for implementation grant the following year, which is the cohort, right now you are just making sure that you're doing your needs and assets assessment and you're just preparing. So when it's time for you to apply, you know exactly how to develop your plan. Next slide, please. So the community schools implementation plan is supposed to be a very strategic document. It's helping you outline specific steps, specific actions, specific initiatives that align with your plan and everything that you need to do to improve the learning environment at your school. It should serve as a roadmap to lead to transformation, transforming that school into that community hub that you need. That's meeting the diverse needs of all the students, the families at the school site. This plan is collaborative. It should have a focus on that continuous improvement, ongoing assessment, and that commitment to build a strong and supportive learning environment. And at the end of the day, the plan will not stay the same. You need to make sure that you adapt it and there's some flexibility as you go from year to year because students change, situations change, environments change. So when that change occurs, the plan will change as well. Because at the end of the day, our ultimate goal with this implementation plan is positive learning outcomes for students, academically, behaviorally, and social emotionally. Next slide, please. For the state of California, they have come up with a implementation plan template that you are able to use that will guide you through the process of creating that plan. You do not have to use the template, but you should make sure that whatever information is in the template that you hit as you are developing your plan. For this purpose of this webinar, we want to make sure that all grantees with community school implementation plan grants know that this is what you are expected to do on an annual basis in regards to developing that plan. Next slide, please. So in that implementation plan template, there are 9 strategies that you have to hit. And you're going to notice some similarities with these strategies. So there are 9 areas. You have share, understanding, and commitment, those collective priorities, which is basically what you tend to do through your needs and assets assessment to determine what those priorities are. You have collaborative leadership, coherence, which is that policy and initiative alignment, staffing and sustainability, strategic community partnerships, professional learning, centering community-based curriculum and pedagogy, and progress monitoring and possibility thinking. So those are the 9 sections that you should hit in your implementation plan. Next slide, please. And if you notice, those sections of the implementation plan perfectly aligns to those capacity building strategies of which we spoke about earlier, the how you're going to implement your implementation plan. So we're going to go over what do these capacity building strategies look at the transformational level. And that's the highest level of when you are implementing your school into that community school hub. These are things that you would have in your environment based on those capacity building strategies, that how piece. This is how it looks in action. Next slide, please. So now let's get into the how. How do these capacity building strategies look in action? Next slide, please. So as you know, there is a capacity building strategies development rubric that is available to you as a resource. And it basically breaks down how each capacity building strategy looks from visioning to enhancing to transforming. So the three different levels that you have for your capacity building strategy. In the long run, we're trying to get to that transformational level. That means it is happening. You see it through the actions in the environment, that each one of these strategies is being implemented, which means that you are building that community school hub that you are transforming your school site into. Next slide, please. So our first capacity building strategy is shared understanding and commitment. And based on a rubric, you see that at the transforming level, everyone in the school environment has an understanding of what you are committed to as a school site. What is our vision? What are we reaching for? What are those outcomes that we're looking for in the students? So examples at the transformation level of how that look, collaborative goal setting, which means teachers, parents, administrators, community members, they are all engaged in setting goals for the school site. You have parent-teacher collaboration for student success, which means our parents and teachers are actively communicating at school and at home, and they both have an understanding of what is needed for student success. Community-driven extracurricular programs. So your community actively participates in the development and implementation of extracurricular programs. Especially this is important as you're trying to find ways to engage your community partners in your community school hub. And last, there are shared resources for holistic support. So everyone at the school is aware of what are those resources that we need to ensure the success of our students. And we all understand and have a commitment to making sure that everyone is aware and we're all implemented it in the same manner. Next slide, please. Our second capacity building strategy is collective priorities, which is setting goals and taking action. And this is the part where we are making sure that we are assessing the needs of our environment to ensure what we need. So, how does this look in action at the transformation level? Well, we're making sure that we definitely have family and community engagement. We're making sure that we're assessing the needs of our families. What are their strengths? What are things that we're already doing well to provide support? And what are the things that we need so we can make sure that we're engaging them? And your collective priority is basically once you get your information on those needs and what's going on, you're able to identify priorities to ensure that family and community engagement is occurring. You may want to assess those mental health and well-being initiatives as we're taking time to make sure that we're meeting the mental health needs of our families. So you may want to conduct a needs assessment to determine what programs do we already have that are working well and what programs do we need, because we realize that identifying mental health is a collective priority for our school site. Community health and nutrition programs. So you want to make sure if we have a priority that we need to make sure that we have health and nutrition programs for our school, that we are doing an assessment to make sure where are we meeting our students at now, what are we doing well and what those needs are. And then last, and this is mostly going at the secondary level, for college and career readiness. That's really huge right now at all of our secondary schools. So what are we doing to make sure that we are preparing our students to ensure that they're college and career ready, because this is a priority for us. So I'm going to go ahead and stop, and we're going to go ahead and just have some conversation about the first two um, capacity building strategies. So as a school site currently, as you guys are going through the process with your grants, what has been areas that have worked well for you in this area? You can raise your hand or put it in the chat, because I think it's very important to see what are we doing in regards to the needs assessment. How are you able to assess your current environment now to determine what those priorities were. You may put it in the chat. You can raise your hand. Anything regards to share understanding and commitment that anyone would like to share in regards to collaborating within your school environment now to see that you're working towards the transformational level? I see in the chat that creating a student advisory council to discuss what students want or need at school. That is really, really huge because student voice is so important. And during this process, as we work with lots of districts, we're noticing that one of the parts that they're trying to make sure is that you have student voice. Um, in the chat, there's also working closely with the administrators. Yes, it's very, very important that we're all working together everybody at all different levels to make sure that we're engaging our environment the way we are doing. Celebrating administrative collaboration. That's very, very important. Again, this is the community schools framework is not meant for people to implement in silos. It is a very collaborative process, and we need to make sure that we are all working together. Another one in the chat, we make sure that we provide various avenues for our community to share. Yes, through different multiple modalities to ensure a variety of voices are heard. That is extremely important, especially during the needs and assets assessment. We have to make sure that we hear all voices because not only are we trying to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students, we have our families, we have our community partners that are involved, and we just want to make sure that, yes, everyone has a space at the table. Lauren Wiley, they utilized the LCAP to guide specific needs assessment questions from the Whole Child Supports Inventory, which was sent to admin who collaborated with their school sites. That is excellent, and that is a wonderful inventory to use to ensure that all voices are captured and that you're getting those assets and needs. Cohort 1 met with cohort 2 coordinators. Awesome. So again, collaborating across different grant cohorts. That sounds amazing. Thank you, you guys, for that. That's greatly appreciated. You can always put it in the chat. We're not afraid to read it, and you can use your voice as well. We love to hear from you. Thank you. Next slide, please. Collaborative leadership at the transformational level. These are major decisions at the school site that are curricular related, operational, personnel, budget, strategic decisions, all those decisions that you're making to ensure that you are transforming your school environment to that community hub needed for our students. How does that look in actions? Inclusive decision making. Collaborative leaders actively seeking input from teachers, parents, students, administrators, and community members, getting those diverse perspectives, making sure that we're hearing everyone's voice at the table. We have that shared vision and mission, right? We're making sure that we are on the same page as we're determining the best needs for our students in the learning community. Effective communication is priority. It is so important that as we're collaborating with one another, that communication is clear and transparent. Everyone understands what is going on in the school community, and that communication is consistent and regular, whether it's through newsletters, town hall meetings, online platforms, advisory councils, however you get that communication out. It's so important that everyone is aware of it and knows that information. Flexibility and adaptability. You have to be open to feedback. As you go through this collaboration process, we are not always going to agree. There are times where we're going to go back and forth and just have those discussions to get on the same page. So always keeping an open mind and being adaptable and flexible. Responsive to community needs. So as we're working together, are we meeting the needs of that environment? So when we're talking about collaborative leadership on the transformational level, these are actions that you should see within your community school hub. Next slide, please. Our fourth strategy is coherence, policy, and alignment. And this is when you are actually taking that time to look at your LCAP, to look at your single plan for student achievement, and what other strategic plans that you have for your school site, and making sure that those initiatives that you're already working on align with the community school plan, that implementation plan that you are trying to develop. And how does that look? That community input during plan development, making sure you're bringing those all stakeholders to the table to discuss how do we set this plan up and does it align with our LCAP and our SIPSA? We're aligning academic and community goals from those, the LCAP and the SIPSA, just to make sure that everything is aligning with our community school strategy. We're looking at how are we allocating funds? Can we allocate funds in a way that not only support our single plan for student achievement, that support the LCAP that's coming from our district, but it also supports the community schools implementation plan that we're trying to develop. Joint evaluation and reporting, making sure that everyone has their eyes on what's going on and that we are constantly monitoring the progress. Data-driven decision making. We're not just making up things to go on there. We are doing it based on the data. So data from your needs and assets assessment, data that you collect throughout the year that may come from your California dashboard, social emotional assessments that you're doing, PBIS assessments that you're doing, any data that can help make sure that you are developing this community schools implementation plan. And last, collaborative professional development, making sure that you're offering professional development that is relevant to the priorities and the goals and the mission and vision of your school. So I'm going to stop and we're going to ask, what are everyone doing in these areas, especially in policy and alignment? Has there been any struggles, any challenges? What are you doing that's really assisting you with making sure that you are working smarter, not harder, and that we're aligning these goals that are in our LCAP and our SIPSA to our community school implementation plan? Has anyone have any best practice or any strategies that have worked for them? You can drop it in the chat. You can raise your hand. We can call on you, however you prefer. Collaborating with our community schools team. Absolutely. Has anyone aligned community school work with a curriculum or instruction initiative? Has anyone done that? That's an excellent question. Again, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand. Seeing those through lines within our system creates deeper alignment across those systems. Absolutely. Collaborating with admins so our community school goals align with the SIPSA. Yes, that is so important because when you're progress monitoring for the SIPSA, at the same time, that allows you to progress monitor for your community school goals. So that is excellent. Okay, next slide, please. One more, we have working with the leadership team to plan and coordinate classroom activities to increase student engagement. That is excellent. Yes. Thank you, Chelsea, for sharing that. That is awesome. The next strategy is staffing and sustainable resources. And over time, you are hoping that your implementation plan that you are developing for your school site will have some sustainability, that you're not only sustaining how you're going to fund key positions, but you're also looking like how are you going to sustain practices and programs and services that have helped you. So some examples here of how it looks at the transformational level is professional learning communities, establishing professional learning communities where teachers are actively engaged, ongoing data, professional development, sharing best practices. This is a ongoing practice and strategy that you are using consistently throughout the year and from year to year. And in funding part, making sure that you're allocating those funds so that teachers can attend those professional developments and foster a culture of continuous improvement, right? Because you do have to set aside money for that. But at the same time, it's more than funding, it's also sustaining that practice. Community liaisons and family engagement coordinators. We know during this process, one of the things is you hire key roles to assist with the implementation of community schools. So when you are hiring these community liaison and these family engagement coordinators and community school coordinators, you're making sure that their roles fit those needs that you are looking for as you're transforming your school site into a community school hub. And at the same time, once your grant sunsets, that you already have a plan set up to make sure that you can continue to allocate money and funding for that salary so your environment doesn't lose out on such a key role and a key staff member that is so important. And extended learning opportunity specialists, hiring those specialists who help with those after school programs and those enrichment programs for that extended learning for our students, and making sure that excuse me, that is always being funded. And again, once the grant sunsets, are we already making sure that we're looking at different funding sources to make sure that we can sustain those roles? So when we're looking at staffing and sustainable resources, yes, funding is important, but programs and services are just as important when you're transforming your school to that community schools hub. So we're going to stop here and see, because this has been a hot topic during the surveys and everything that we get in regards to sustainability. What are challenges, or what are anything that's working well in regards to sustaining certain practices that is going on in your current district or environment right now? Does anyone have business or CTA partners as a co-driver in your vision? You can put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand, either way. Well, as we go along, if you think of anything that can be helpful for another person, that would be, because again, as we are on these webinars, and right now we're doing our community of practice, it's so important that we share anything that we're struggling with or anything that has been working, because it's a lesson learned from someone else. And that just goes on from one district to the next, and there we have a best practice that was created, right? Because it's all worked well somewhere else and you're able to share it. So if you can think of anything as we continue to go through the slides, just put in the chat and we can share it, and that may help another person who may be struggling in that area. Next slide, please. Strategic community partnerships. I cannot emphasize how important this is when it comes to strategic community partnerships. At the transformational level, community partnerships should align with the needs of your school site. They should align with the priorities and goals of your school site. So, for example, if my objective is to provide students with real world exposure and career readiness skills, mostly like our secondary students that are in high school, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to partner with a local business that offer internships, that offer apprenticeships, that offers job shadowing opportunities. They come to the school environment. They'll provide lectures and career fairs for our students so they can see this is the route you may want to take, the real world exposure. So your partner should offer those opportunities. Again, that alignment. If I want to make sure that I'm supporting the health and well-being of students and families, then I want to get some healthcare providers and wellness organizations that's going to provide checkups for my students, that's going to make sure that their nutrition is up to par. They have physical health services, they have mental health services. They're offering workshops to our parents. If I'm trying to strengthen the connection between school and families, then I'm going to make sure that I have a strong PTA on campus. I'm going to bring in other community partners that offer parenting classes, that are establishing resources, advocacy for our parents, family assistance. So, whatever community partner that you are strategically partnering with as you're going through the community school process, the community school's journey, it should align to your priorities and needs. So, if you already have existing partners and they're not fulfilling a need, you may need to have a conversation with those partners and say, hey, these are the needs. Are you able to fulfill it? If you're able to fulfill if they're able to fulfill that, work with them, get it done. But if they're not, then you may need to go to the board and relook at review that partnership that you have established and determine, do we continue to go on with it or do we need to get a new one? So in regards to your current community partnerships, have you been able to make sure that they align with the priorities? And please put that in the chat. Have you made sure that your current community partners or community partners that you are trying to bring on align with your priorities? You can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand because we would love to hear from you. Okay, so at Harupa, they have a great parent involvement and community outreach department that has supported community schools with partnerships. That is excellent. So let's see, interns from CBU to support in our wellness center. Mental health is a need. Thank you. Anyone else feel free to put in the chat. I love it. Interns, we have the parent involvement and community outreach department. Those are very, very essential to meet those needs that you have for your school sites. Excellent work. Again, please feel free to put things in the chat that can help someone else. Mutually beneficial relationships with our community partners lead to sustainability. We want to work with our community partners, businesses, parents, caregivers, students, teachers, etc. It's a two-way street. Yes, the relationships should be reciprocal. So if you have a community partner and you're asking them to fulfill a need, at the same time on that two-way street, you need to make sure that you take the time to find out what they do, how they do it, how do you provide that resource to your families, what is the proper way, that you have all the correct information if you're offering that community partner as a resource. And they need to be trained on what you do. You need to be trained on what they do. Again, that two-way street because it is a partnership. Next slide, please. Professional learning. We are always learning. The professional learning that you decide to do for your community hub, for your school site is very, very important. It should address the needs, the priorities of your school site that leads to positive student outcomes. So at the transformational level, you're looking at shared leadership structures for professional development, which means everyone is involved, teachers, administrators, parents, community members, and we're all looking for opportunities to what areas that we need to get professional learning on, whether it's cultural, whether it's strategies for making sure that our students are engaged, whether it's from motivation to making sure that our students are coming to school for those great attendance rate. It needs to be a shared leadership structure. Everyone has input to decide what's the best professional learning route for our school site. Community-driven professional learning workshops. So workshops that are put on by your community partners that engage the families, engage the students based off of the priorities and needs of your school site. Community embedded professional development days. So there should be days that are already embedded into the school year where you have set aside time for professional learning. It's intentional, not only for teachers, but for students and for parents, families, and your community partners benefit from those professional development days. Yes, they're their community partner, but they don't work at school sites like you do throughout the whole day. So they should also continue to get that continuous professional learning so they know what's going on at your school site. Are there any districts on the call that have this, they got this, they have established a well-versed professional learning environment at their school, or any current strategies that they're using to enhance their professional learning at their school site? You can put it in the chat or raise your hand. We love to hear from you. Okay, so in the chat, we know community school strategy is new to many California educators, absolutely. So we must learn who are providing this professional learning around community schools. Yes, and one of the districts right now that we know that is providing that actually has a lab for that is the Anaheim High School Union School District, right? Anaheim Union High School District. I always get it mixed up, but they actually have a lab that they have in place that actually is built towards learning strategies to help build community schools. And that is a great professional learning opportunity that is out there. And again, we have these community of transformational practices that we're doing. We have our peer learning webinars. There are things going throughout the year through other entities and partners that we work with. And those are opportunities to also get that professional learning. Community schools is new to most of us in California. There have been a couple of entities such as Anaheim Union High School District, Oakland Unified School District, that are kind of the early trendsetters of this work. And it is okay not to know. But what's not okay is seeking out the information you need to improve. So it's very, very important that if you don't know where to start, you can reach out to us. We are here as a RTAC. You can probably speak to other districts that are probably in the same situation, and they've also have had conferences and things that they have gone to as well. So it's okay to not necessarily be at the top of your game on this, but we all must take the opportunity to take the time to learn and get better and get to that transformational level, because it's so needed as we're developing our community schools hubs. Next slide, please. Centering community-based curriculum and pedagogy. So I'm at the transformational level, you are incorporating a community-based curriculum and pedagogy, and this is outside of the Common Core standards. I know some people are like, oh my God, how do I integrate this? So much work. They should be working together. And it's important for us to know our local context with our community, because it's going to look different from community to community. It's not going to look the same. So I may be working on culturally responsive literature and text. And that culturally responsive literature is going to be based on the community at my school. What cultures do my school represent? And integrate them into curriculum. When I'm looking at community connected project-based learning, each community is set up differently. So I may be working on a different project based in my community versus another district that may be 10 miles or 15 miles down the street. Multilingual learning environments is going to look different. We have multiple languages in California, right? So those multilingual learning environments are going to look different, which means the design of that curriculum will look different. Culturally relevant assessments, same thing. As you are utilizing culturally responsive teaching in the classroom and you're introducing students to text and other academic supports that are based on their cultures, the assessments are going to look different from school to school based on the culture of that school. So your needs and assets assessment can include curriculum and instruction inquiries to best inform pedagogy. Absolutely. And as you see changes in the world around us, learning in our schools remind us that schools and learning are dynamic, not static. So yes, they may change from year to year because communities change, cultures of schools change. But the main thing is to make sure that as you are implementing this strategy, that is based on the local context of your school environment. Next slide, please. Our last strategy is progress monitoring and possibility thinking. That ongoing continuous improvement that you have implemented into your community school hub on a regular and consistent basis. How are you setting up your system for regular academic achievement tracking? What kind of reports are you using to let the students know, the parents know, our community partners know what's going on academically with our students? How are you monitoring attendance and engagement? How do you make sure that students are engaged in the classroom and that they're attending? What reports are you using? What data are you doing? What's your system? Health and wellness assessments. How do we make sure that our students are coming to us healthy and well? What are you doing to assess our students to ensure that they're mentally healthy, they're physically healthy? How do we monitor the progress of our students with behavior and their social emotional well being? How are we doing that? And then community satisfaction surveys. Are our parents, are our families, are our students satisfied with the supports and services that we are providing for them in the school? And this is happening annually. This is a system that you have that you are continuously looking at progress monitoring because that is an improvement. At the end of the day, yes, you're implementing the California Community Schools framework, but the California Community Schools framework is a improvement strategy. It's all about continuous improvement that leads to positive student learning and positive student outcomes. The why. So as we're looking at our why, we have our 4 overarching values, which is the why of the California Community Schools framework. So being racially just centered learning spaces, shared power, classroom community connection, and a focus on continuous improvement are our overarching values. Next slide, please. So if I'm looking at examples of what do racially just relationship centered spaces look as we have our Y in community schools, it's ensuring that we have a diverse curriculum, that culturally responsive teaching is occurring. We have multilingual support for families who speak languages other than English. We have student led initiatives. That way, we can make sure that all students are included and that it's equitable and is diverse. We have inclusive events and celebrations on campus. We have equitable resource allocation, so we are equally distributing our funds and our resources to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all students. And we have safe spaces and support services. So this is the why, and this is how racially just relationship center spaces look when we have them in our schools. Next slide, please. Shared power. Shared power is another why for our community schools, right? We have to make sure that we are no longer working in silo. So if I have a school that I know is definitely have the why of shared power, we should see teacher collaboration in professional learning communities. We should see those school governance councils such as School Site Council, English Language Advisory Councils, African American Parent Advisory Councils. We should see those in the school site. You should see collaborative planning committees where you have administrators, teachers, and parents working together to decide how our curriculum is going to look. What kind of professional development are we going to utilize? What are the community engagement initiatives? And we have inclusive hiring practices where all stakeholders are involved in the hiring process of staff members at our school site. Next slide, please. When we're talking about the why of classroom community and connections, the examples, you have community-based learning projects, guest speakers and community experts, field trips to local businesses, service learning programs, community partnerships, parent and community volunteer programs, community-driven events. You want to make sure that as we are building this community hub, that our school has a connection to the local community that surrounds them. That's how you're going to get that connection. So these are just examples. Next slide, please. And last, that focus on continuous improvement. We need to make sure that We are doing everything we can through data-driven decision making, that we are using improvement cycles such as plan, do, study acts, where we can break down certain things in our environment that may not be working well, but we do want to improve on them. Next slide, please. So that was a lot of information in 45 minutes. And is information that you do need. As you are really trying to build your implementation plan, it's very, very important that you see what are the outcomes that we're trying to get to at the highest level. And the highest level of when we are implementing community school hubs, we are at the transformational level. We are transforming our current brick and mortar to that community hub where our students can come to school and have those barriers removed that's preventing them from learning, and they get those positive student outcomes that help them academically, behaviorally, and social emotionally. If you have any questions, you can ask or feel free to put it in the chat. There are some resources that are being shared in the chat right now. There is a resource page through CDE for continuous improvement resources. The link has been shared for the resource guide for the capacity building resources, which again is very, very important as you are developing your community schools implementation plan. Next slide, please. And I'm going to hand it back over to Ms. Siobhan.
As everyone starts to think about what they got out of today's conversation, what practical strategy or example resonated with you, please jump into your emojis and choose a heart, a spade, or a club, or a diamond that represents what you're walking away from today's session with. The 9 capacity building strategies that were shared and all the examples that come with them and all the values. And then the 4 overarching values. Are you walking away with a gem? Do you have a new idea? Did somebody drop something in the chat that touched you? I know when I saw the Student Advisory Council for the 7th and 8th graders, I wanted to jump in and cheer. When we're centering students' voices, that is my happy place. So I'm throwing a heart out to that comment that was in the chat. A club, is there something that has helped you grow? Do you have a new thought or idea from the capacity building strategies or the overarching values? And there are a lot of spades. Are those spades? My there are a lot of spades popping up in the chat, and a diamond for a gem of wisdom you're taking from the workshop, and a number of clubs popping up, something that helped you grow a new perspective. So I'm glad everyone's taken a moment to pause and think about, hey, this is what I'm walking away with. And as we move to our next slide, Stephanie, I'd like you to take that reflection and put it into our participation feedback. We really want to hear from all of you. And if you're walking away with gems, but still having lingering questions, we want to hear about that. If you're walking away with something that touched you and then that sparked a question, or you wish you would have gotten something, we really appreciate you clicking the link or taking a scan of that QR code and providing us with the feedback so that we can continue to meet the needs of our STAC. So I'm going to leave that there for a moment. And while we are here, I'd like to invite everybody to invite your leadership, your district level leadership, your site level leadership, your coordinator leadership teams to our peer learning webinar next week on January 17th, where we'll be having a conversation with Anaheim Union High School District's assistant principal around visioning and leading. He's going to come in and talk about some of those systems that are in place in their organization that has led to the work that they've done over the last 8 to 10 years. So as we mentioned, and Dr. Sanford is taking her team over there. We're actually going to have their assistant superintendent come and share a bit of that and what you may see when you go on a visit there. So please come see us January 17th. And if you need that link, we'll send it out with the resources. And speaking of resources, the last slide, when we send out this deck, we'll have resources of a number of examples to support your implementation plan. As Dr. Kemp mentioned, it is due June 30th for cohorts 1 and 2, and then our planning cohorts who are applying for implementation, you will include your implementation plan as you apply February 9th for the implementation grant. And then last but not least, if you need any of us, please send us an email at ccspp@sbcss.net. And we're going to increase our activity on Twitter, now X. And if you need to hear any of our voices, you just call us. We're very happy to have you all here this afternoon. We will stay on for another 30 minutes to answer any burning questions that you have as you are planning or implementing. Other than that, you guys have a great afternoon.
And just to add, yeah, definitely invite anyone you would like to be here next week with Jaron Freed, who is the assistant soup of Anaheim Union. He is incredible energy. I sat through a lot of sessions with him with Michael Fullen through CSLA, 21st century or 21st CSLA, and he is awesome. So you don't want to miss that. So make sure you invite people who you think, your assistant soups or superintendents, have them come and join us.